College football is back. Week 0 is here. We've got real games. No more talking about practice. No more watching old games, reminiscing, thinking about what's to come. It's here. I'm Justin Michael. This is DNVR Rams Live, and I am pleased to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Andre Simone. If you're familiar with the DNVR Draft Pod, you're going to love this because this is a podcast for college football nerds. I mean, obviously...
For the sickos.
Yeah, it's for the people that most identify with us. We are college football sickos, and frankly, there's not enough content out there for those that live and breathe CFB. If you're familiar with the Draft Pod, like I said, you're going to love us. If you listen to the normal CSU Rams pod on Spotify, Apple, wherever you may get your content, you're going to dig this as well, but we are going to have more video throughout this season. We're going to have a post-game show on Saturday nights following the games, but this will be every Thursday morning. Really looking forward to getting into it. This show is really going to be about CSU specifically, the Mountain West. I feel like I have just, an area of expertise that I can kind of lock into here.
No doubt.
There aren't a lot of folks that are tuned into the Mountain West, as much as me. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but if you are a Mountain West fan, I think that this show is going to be valuable for you because not only are we going to set the scene for what's relevant with CSU, what's happening with the Rams, but what's really happening with the Mountain West and college football as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have Dre on it. Like I said, he is a nerd just like me. We're going to get you ready each and every week for college football, what it has to offer, what CSU has to offer. But that's really all this show is going to be. As far as CSU in 2023, I think it's an exciting time for the program. I mean, obviously there's a lot of focus right now on what's happening at the other local school. It makes sense. They've got a lot of national hype. I understand that. The thing about CSU is it really feels like there's an opportunity for this to be a special year for the program.
Yeah.
And as somebody that, really loves college football and was fortunate, to be at CSU during a 2.5-year period, essentially, where the Rams really had their only sustained success in the 21st century outside of sunny Lubick. And I keep thinking to myself, the last 10 years, how many students came and went through Fort Collins? How many students went to CSU, including my younger brother, without a single... big sports memory that you can look back on, that moment of, remember homecoming. Football wise. That's a good point.
Respect to Roddy and the whole basketball program.
The basketball,
absolutely.
They got to be at a peak time for hoops, but just CSU football, when I think back to being at school and, 2013 is kind of when the magic started for the Rams, and they beat Wyoming that year. They beat Air Force, and obviously the 2013 New Mexico Bowl is widely regarded as one of the craziest college football games of all time, probably the most dramatic CSU football game I've ever watched. Then that goes into 2014, and you have homecoming, and they sell out Hughes Stadium for the first time in a decade, and the students storm the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the moments that stick with you for generations. And I don't want to get too carried away, but the scene is kind of set for CSU to potentially have some of those moments this year. You've got a Power 5 team coming into Canvas Stadium to open up the year. You go to Boulder and the Rocky Mountain Showdown is back.
Right.
Air Force, Wyoming are there for the taking. Boise State comes to town on homecoming. It's going to be a sold out crowd. That is the type of stage you want. Can CSU finally take advantage and start winning some of these games? I think that's the thing I'm most interested on. I'm curious, we're going to get into some predictions here for the Rams. What is your gut feeling with this squad going in? Obviously, like I said, there's a lot of hype with the other program, but this is a team that has significant talent. I mean, we talk about it on the Draft Podcast all the time. Jack Howell, Torrey Horton, Mohamed Kamara.
Yeah.
These are dudes.
Yeah. A lot of guys who, who matter to winning. It's a very modern football team as it's constructed, where you can get after the quarterback and you should be able to throw it, throw for days. Horton, Millen, Norvell. Like that, this should be, Fort Fun and like Air Raid West, it's on. And use that altitude and all those kind of factors. I don't know how much you know, but I think, and this is a convo I've had with Eric, who's also a Rams optimist here in the office and a Rams alumni. It feels like so much of it comes down to the O-line. Yeah,
and I mean, they had the worst offensive line in the country a year ago. Yeah. That's not being dramatic. That's not hyperbole. It was bad. They allowed the most sacks per game in the country. On top of that, they had a whole bunch more plays that went for negative yardage. I mean, they struggled to sustain drives. They were bad on third down. They were bad in the red zone. And all of that stems from the issues they had in the trenches. Now,
and an air raid system, up-tempo, everything you just mentioned gets so much more accentuated, right?
Yeah.
Like, not sustaining drives mean our offense was on the field for 20 seconds and our defense is just gas. Like, it compounds so drastically,
And that's part of why I think there's, again, I think it's controlled optimism as of right now, or, cautious optimism. There's a large part of the CSU contingent that I think, is kind of in the position where it's like, I'll believe it when I see it. And that's fair given the last, 6 years now. It has not been good. But you mentioned the offensive struggles. This CSU team, I mean, it was basically outside of small stretches where Avery Morrow was able to get the ground game going against Nevada and Hawaii and some of these other opponents. It was basically, did we hit Torrey on a fly?
Right.
No. Okay. Well, then we're going to punt.
Yeah.
And impressively enough, the defense actually was pretty good for CSU last year. They were on the field all the time. They allowed just over 20 points a game in conference play. They gave CSU a chance to be competitive in every single game they're in. I'm not saying they're going to be able to do that every single game again, but assuming that the defense doesn't take a step back, you build off what they were able to accomplish last year. They have a ton of returning talent. So long as the offensive line is even, like, they could even be below average. That's how bad they were last year. That's how big of an improvement it would be. When you look at the talent at the skill positions, you have a quarterback coming back that completed 72% of his passes as a true freshman while getting his teeth kicked in. There's a lot to like.
I mean, there's a lot to like across the board, man. What's interesting from what you were saying is why this is lining up to be a big year, and why I think people need to actually believe is in between that, like, the golden years that you were attending school for, has been a massive commitment from the university, financially and facilities. I mean, and going after big hires, and just really committing to the athletic program in ways that, frankly, in this region, we are not very used to. And that's where the lack of momentum has really hurt. Because if you had combined that with some positive momentum on the football field, you'd really be cooking with gas.
That's what kills me, man, is it's not for a lack of effort, And
that's right.
It almost stings worse. Like, it's kind of like
it should.
It's some people, they don't ask anybody out on a date because it's easier to just not get rejected than get rejected. Right. I mean, in some ways it's worse to go up and go swinging, but I don't know. I just think of what could be with this roster, with this schedule. Obviously, there's a lot of attention on college football right now. It only takes like a win or two to get that momentum going. You just have to strike the iron, get some of that positive momentum rolling. I mean, you come out and you play well against a team like Washington State. It's going to feel a lot different than, the start of last year where, frankly, it was about as rough as it can get in non-conference play.
Well, and in retrospect, you know how good Michigan was. And yeah, I mean, the other thing is like what Jay Norvell did last year. I don't want to say unprecedented, but fairly, because we're in a new era of college football where that kind of level of roster turnover is very new. I mean, the old saying was you can't even analyze a college football coach until like year 3, You don't
even get 3 years anymore.
No, forget it. So, and I mean, it's different from other programs like a Lincoln Riley coming to USC.
Yeah.
Like, I could recruit at USC. We could lose every game. There's still going to be a ton of talent on that roster no matter what. This was a full turnover from especially how backed up the talent was on the roster from the Adazio days. And it's, it's not going to be a overnight And I think year 2, seeing that progress, seeing where you're at, is going to be really huge.
I'm glad you brought that up because I recently was talking with associate head coach, quarterbacks coach Matt Mumme, son of legendary football coach Hal Mumme.
Yeah.
And he essentially alluded to the same thing, didn't say it exactly like that, but basically said, I think the timing was bad last year. We're coming in, obviously third staff change in less than 4 years. You're in a really weird spot as far as roster construction goes. And, you're kind of trying to take a lot of square pegs and jam them into the circles. And it didn't work out. A lot of guys chose to leave via the portal. That really hurt the depth. You throw a lot of freshmen onto the field that frankly weren't ready for that. Mm-hmm. And some of those guys were able to hit the ground running and find their footing as the season went on. But just nothing about last year was ideal. And essentially going into this year, again, comes down to improved play in the trenches. It feels like everything is the opposite in terms of bad timing. All of a sudden, now you've got 15 returning starters of your own.
Yeah.
You've been able to go out and find talent via the portal, not just to literally add bodies to the room because you had scholarship totals in the low 50s by the end of last season, but you're able to be a little bit pickier. We need a tight end that can go attack the middle of the field. So they go get Dallin Holker from BYU. They go get a Trey Mejia-Pastor from Cal, who's going to be one of their starting linebackers. Dom Jones comes over from North Dakota State, your corner too. It's just a completely different position. Instead of having to basically build your entire offense and defense, it's like, all right, we've got the majority of these key pieces here. Now we had a corner, we had a linebacker, another couple receivers. And all of a sudden, it's like, man, this team is stacked in a way we haven't seen since 2017.
I mean, it's the first full recruiting cycle of the Norvell era. We forget that, but that's, he's not even had a calendar year to work on these guys.
And
right?
What's crazy is even in that short time, he's already signed. If you look at the top 30, signees or football commits in program history on 247 Sports, and it only goes back to 2000, I believe, so it's somewhat flawed, but it's 15 of 30 are from the Norvell era. Yeah. Hasn't even had multiple full classes yet.
Yep. I mean, that says it all, and you're going to be behind on, even that isn't a full cycle compared to other coaching staffs who've had 2 years, right? Yeah. This, where you're recruiting the 2024 group, will really feel like maybe the first full cycle, or maybe that won't happen till 2025. We forget, but these are teenagers that you need to develop, and it's not going to be instant gratification for everyone but a couple programs. You still need to build, and it's kind of a slow build, and this feels like the right time. This feels like the right leader to me. I mean, I think definitely. How they went after Jay Norvell was different from other hires who maybe felt a little flashier or...
Yeah, I mean, you hire a guy like Steve Adazio, and on paper, he was a part of the Florida Gators' reign under Urban Meyer. He was a guy who, although not wildly successful in the ACC, was competitive at Boston College. He had his moments in the sun. They had some upsets. You could understand the logic of, well, this guy was highly revered on a national championship winning staff, one of the best programs we've seen in the SEC in the last 20 years. Didn't have the resources in the ACC or punching uphill at CSU. It's a completely different conversation. You have some of the most resources in the league, and that's what makes their lack of success that much more frustrating.
Absolutely.
But I'm right there with you. You go out and you get a guy like Norvell. He's not a national household name, but he's a guy that's won in this. He should be. If you're a college football nerd, he was a part of some of those OU offenses with Broyles. He's worked at Texas, Nebraska. He's
look at his resume. His resume is that of a guy who.
He worked with Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison in the Colts. Jobs.
That's exactly right.
Al Davis revered him so much they were personal friends. He's the tight end coach, and he impressed Al Davis so much they had an actual relationship. Mm-hmm. That's not common. I don't know if you guys recognize that. Shout out to our guy Addison in the chat. This is going to be a special year and a launching pad for the university. That's what I'm hoping for, man. That's what this is. Really what I'm trying to get to here is it's all lined up for you. The dominoes are all set. You got to knock one down, and hopefully you're able to get it. They've come up flat in these recent years, but there's just something that feels different about this group. And maybe it's my green and gold glasses, maybe it's my heart coming in, but Dre's been around me for a long time. I wasn't talking about these teams the last couple years the way I'm talking about the CSU group.
Yeah, not at all. It seems different. And honestly, looking at the chat, it feels different too. There seems like there's a lot of optimism. And yes, it is measured optimism.
Well, you understand, you can see realistically where it could go wrong. The depth in the offensive line, it's not stellar. And that's, recruiting, it's going to take time. It's going to take a couple of classes of Norvell going out, identifying his type of offensive lineman, not trying to, bring a couple of these other guys from older regimes along and hope you can hit it, in the transfer portal. And it seems like the starting five is solid. They've got a couple of guys making a jump from the FCS and D2 ranks, but they got here in spring. They've competed well against a defensive line that's arguably the best in the conference, if not at least top 2 or 3. It feels good. I mean, that O-line last year got torched in the spring, and it was a situation where you're like, I'm not trying to come on the pod every day and be like, panic, everything is wrong, but it's one of those where you're like, it's a little alarming when they're going back every single snap. That continued throughout fall. And then once injuries happened, that was the thing. They didn't have it. Like those guys, the ones weren't good, but the 2s and 3s were even worse. They didn't have anybody to replace them with. It was rough. This year, you feel good about your starting 5. There's 2-3 other guys you feel like, as long as they're not, taking every snap of the game, if they're in for some rotational series here and there, it'll be okay. But it's not Bama where it's like the 3rd string offensive tackles in. He's a 5-star.
No, not at all. Especially with the coaching changes and everything. That impacts things as well. That impacts depth and everything else. It's going to be a fascinating year, man. Fascinating. And everything's on the table. Like, this is kind of the last year of college football as we know it. And then we're entering a whole new era, whether we like it or not. So how you can position yourself from this point on is really huge as well.
Well, and we're going to get into that a little bit down the line. There's a lot of realignment rumors swirling right now. Well, we're not getting into it quite yet, but, at this point, it's a lot of speculation, a lot of what happens this. But it does seem like the future really is going to come down to what happens with Stanford, what happens with Cal, and then indirectly Oregon State, Washington State, schools like SMU, CSU as a result of that. We'll get into it. Before we do, I do have 10 predictions for 2023. I feel like we've set the scene for the season. Everything is possible. Obviously, there's some reasons for skepticism as well. You haven't had a winning season in 6 years. If you're not the most optimistic individual coming into the season, I can't really blame you. I get it if you are wait and see. I've been burned myself in the past as well, but let's just get into it. I'm not going to take a ton of time on this. Dre, feel free to chime in at any point. The Rams averaged 13.2 points per game a year ago. That's not good. I think they at least double that in 2023. I'm saying they average 26 points a game, which would be a massive leap. A massive
leap. That's part of the thing this season is, as optimistic as you are, last season was rough, and even doubling feels like, okay, now we're cooking with gas.
Well, that would essentially be what you became accustomed to with the Norvell offenses once they were rolling at Nevada, and that's kind of the theme this season.
Maybe even crank it up a little more than 27 per game,
And that very well could happen, especially if the red zone offense is better. Mm-hmm. You've got good news yesterday or 2 days ago. The Avery Morrow, who was the 3rd most productive running back in Mountain West play a year ago, he will be eligible. Has a bit of a tricky legal situation still set for trial in November. We'll see what happens there. But he'd been practicing with the team. It was unclear if he was going to be able to play in games or not. Now, Kevin Lytle, the Coloradoan, he broke that a couple days ago. He will play. So you get him. You've got Kobe Johnson from North Dakota State. There's a lot of ways you could see where they're putting points on the board.
And again, Jay Norvell's scheme. I'm expecting the high 20s. Absolutely.
All right, keeping it moving. Last year, you had one individual finish the year with 500 or more receiving yards, Torrey Horton. He was the entire offense. I'm saying 5 different Rams finished this season with at least 500 receiving yards.
That'd be
Torrey,
amazing.
That's a lock. I think Dallin Holker, another lock. Justice Ross Simmons. Now all of a sudden you need a couple of guys to make a leap, but Lewis Brown, they're really high on. Mekhi Fox is a top 5 CSU signee of all time. They're hoping he breaks out in his sophomore year. There's a lot of talent. And again, a lot of this is just coming down to the O-line is not going to be the worst in the country again. So everything could be significantly better. It's not that crazy to say they are going to be 5 times more productive when it comes to receiving output.
That's going to be the depth, man.
That's the depth. Clay Millen, he is going to average at least 2 passing touchdowns per game. If he does that, that would basically put him right in line with what Carson Strong did his second year. Then he really broke out. You know, his third year was Conference Player of the Year and all that. Everything is on the table for Clay Millen. He has all the arm talent, great bloodlines. His dad, an NFL QB, played with the Broncos. We got to see more from him. And there is a little bit of me that's worried about the residual impact of taking all those hits. I've talked about it with Matt Mumme, the quarterback coach, and he's honest with me. There are times where we see him speed his drop back a little bit and he's not patient. When you are a vertical passing offense, there are going to be moments where you got to sit back there and you got to let the play develop downfield. We'll see what happens there. But again, I'm very confident in Clay Millen's abilities, especially just seeing how efficient he was last year. He doesn't throw the ball into coverage. Like, he had maybe 2 or 3 throws all of last year where I was like, man, that was a freshman throw.
Right. Hey, man, the greats come from situations like this and they overcome that, but you do always worry about bad habits.
It's just, he took a beating last year. Yep. And it's a lot of quarterbacks with talent over the years have been impacted by it. Keeping it moving. If this offense is significantly better, if the Rams are in contention, and I've got a little bit bolder team predictions coming up, Torrey Horton is the best offensive player in this conference in terms of raw talent. This is an award that typically goes to QBs. I think Torrey Horton could have the type of season where he wins Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year, especially if the Rams are as good as I think they can be.
How successful does the team have to be for Horton to be?
They got to at
mix?
least be in the bowl game. I think you need 7 regular season wins to justify it, especially if you have like a Taylon Green at Boise State break out with a great sophomore year. They potentially win 8, 9, 10 games.
Right.
You've got to at least be competitive enough to where you see it made an impact in the win-loss results. But I mean, statistically, you look at what he did last year, and they're double teaming him every single snap. Now he has some talent around him. They can't just shadow you over the top with the safety every snap. If they do, Dallin Holker is going to eat you alive in the middle. Right. I think it's one of those he benefits from having more talent around him.
It's going to be fun, and might be that year where there's not that stellar quarterback, so there's an opening for the skill position guys.
And like the thing about Boise, and I really like Taylon Green. To be a true freshman that comes in like week 4 the way he did last year and turn it around, it speaks just volumes to his potential down the line. That said, Boise wants to run the ball. They got the best backfield in the conference, probably with Ashton Genty and George Halani, assuming Halani can stay healthy. Inherently, they want to play defense. They want to chew the clock. Like, it's not going to be Taylon Green throwing for 400 yards a game, putting up Jake Haener type numbers, for instance. Keeping it moving. Let's go to the defensive side. We've talked a lot about the offense, the air raid, the defense. There's legit All-American candidates out here between Jack Howell and Mo Kamara. This one's kind of bold, but I'm saying Mo Kamara posts a double-digit sack season.
I think in the Mountain West, totally possible.
Because it's just like,
he's that
you could
good.
see a game where it's like, oh, he had 4 that day.
Yes, also. And I mean, how many did he have last season?
8, I believe. So I
playing from behind,
that, but yeah.
Like, what if he ever got to nurse a lead and just pin his ears back and go after the quarterback because, we're up 7, we're up 10 in the 4th, and now they have to pass it, and Mo can just get after it. Now we're talking about maybe the hot takes could be top 15 in the country in sacks.
Let's go. And he had 8.5 a year ago, 6.5 the year before that, and he wasn't even starting full-time the year before that because he was playing behind Patchen and McBride and Manny Jones.
Plays so low to the ground. He's awesome, man. Leverage king.
He's going to be like an outside linebacker type in the NFL. I don't think he'll be a hand-on-the-ground defensive end, but I think he could have that Shaq Barrett type season. Shaq Barrett was the 2013 Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. I predicted Horton wins Offensive Player of the Year. I think it's unlikely that the Rams take both. You never know, with a big season.
Yeah.
But either of those guys, and I'll put Jack Howell in that conversation as well, are certainly capable of taking home the individual hardware.
Yep.
I think those three are three of the top 10 players in the conference. I think CSU has an argument that they have 5 of the top 20, though, I'll admit, probably omitting San Diego State a little bit in that conversation.
Yeah,
Jack Howell, he's going to have another 100-plus tackle season.
Run it back.
Best safety on this half of the country. Rams, and this one's fun, they're going to return a punt and a kick for a touchdown this year.
Oh, wow.
Torrey Horton at punt returner is a weapon. Now you put Kobe Johnson and Damian Henderson, 4-star recruit, true freshman, top ESPN top 300 player back there at kickoff. They have the type of athleticism where if you give them just like a foot of too much space, they're gone. Yeah. And I love that Norvell's doing that. I love that he's playing his best players on special teams. I've seen so many staffs through the years come through, and I get they want to have opportunities for certain guys to see the field that are working hard, that aren't necessarily good enough to start on offense, defense, but could be a gunner. But also at the same time, when the stakes are as high as this, one play can make or break a game, and just having your best athlete back there makes a lot of sense to me.
It's a lot of games at altitude. Those punters and kickers can really boom them.
Well, yeah, you overkick your coverage, you get a head of steam going, and
fair enough.
Usually they're doing it to CSU, but
that's a good point.
This year I think it's the Rams. I like the special teams. I like that they have a special teams coordinator. After watching the disastrous special teams era under the previous regime, we don't need to talk about the Utah State game or the Boise State game or any of the other infamous moments that will be burned in my nightmares for years to come.
For real.
3 more. The Rams will have a winning record on the road, and they're going to have to because their home schedule is really challenging. It doesn't start easy with trips to Boulder and Middle Tennessee, who's deceptively like a postseason team every single year. They've had the same coach for 20 years. They benefit from continuity.
Yep.
Yep. I just think if CSU is going to be the team I think they are, they're going to have to be able to beat some of these squads like Utah State and Middle Tennessee and UNLV on the road. I think those 3 games flip your season positively or negatively.
That's a bold one, but that'd be huge. I mean, talk about setting an identity for your squad. Win those tough road games.
Well, and the thing is they're all games you could see CSU winning. You can certainly see them losing as well. But what I like about it is you're not going into the big house. Boulder, that's going to be insane. You got to go into Laramie. That's really hard. Middle Tennessee, just kind of, and maybe this is an ignorant opinion from someone that doesn't follow the program closely enough, but listening to some of the people that talk about them, it sounds like they're a better road team because their home environment is so terrible. Like nobody in Tennessee cares about Middle Tennessee. It's all about the Vols.
That's a shame.
Like they get some juice in going into your building and being spoilers. And they certainly did it a year ago. Again, we'll see on that theory. But I think the Rams have to have a winning record on the road or at least go 500. Maybe if you pull a home upset or two to have a chance to be a bowl team realistically.
If you're road warriors, the way this team's set up, that pass rush needs to carry you on those road games.
Totally.
That's what travels, like get after the quarterback, hit those guys, make them earn it.
And that's what feels good about this squad. They have 8-9 defensive linemen. They're going to be able to rotate 2, 3, 4 of them are all conference type players. The secondary is as deep as it's ever been. Like those are aspects of a team that could be successful. And you talked about kind of built like an NFL team. That's what this is. They've got talent at receiver, defensive line, the secondary, quarterback. Like the trenches is the one thing we'll have to see. This one's my bold one. This is my boldest prediction that I have. I actually gave it on TDSP a couple weeks back, so it's not the first time I've said this publicly. CSU is going to win at least two, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't want to put a ceiling on it. They're going to win 2 rivalry games out of those local matchups. Air Force, Wyoming, CU. The Rams take 2, at least 2.
That would be huge. And I hope it's true.
I hope so too. Finally, if all of these things happen, it seems pretty obvious, but CSU's going back to the to the postseason. They are going to make a bowl for the first time since 2017. We just had somebody ask about floor versus ceiling. I think their floor is 5 wins. I think their ceiling realistically is probably like 8 wins in the regular season. It's a really challenging schedule, guys. Having to play your 2 biggest rivals on the road. Boise State's coming in, your homecoming game's not a gimme. Again, Middle Tennessee, a lot of these games are deceptively challenging. Even the season finale at Hawaii, where, potentially could be postseason on the line, and 9 p.m. Mountain kickoff. I mean, that's a house of horrors. That's still the best home field advantage outside of like crowd and college football is Hawaii on the island.
I mean, Rams number set at 5. Wins over under wins this season.
It was set at 5.5 for Norvell in year 1. And
that's right.
I have a hard time seeing this team be worse than they were a year ago.
Like, you're just predicting slightly over this for a lot of these.
Yeah.
These aren't crazy predictions.
No, and it's like coming back to everything is on the table this year. You don't want to get too carried away too early because this schedule is challenging, because we do have to see how this offensive line shapes out. While it has been encouraging with what we've seen with some of these transfers in fall camp, they've got to do it on, a game day. It's a different stage. There's a lot we have to see. It's not crazy to think this team is going to be right in the mix, potentially, if you pull an upset for conference championship. And there's a lot of
we need it.
There's a lot of Vegas love for CSU in terms of the over, in terms of the Mountain West Championship. It's actually come down a little bit, which I'm not surprised, but you can find those odds and more with our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. You've waited all year. The time's finally arrived. College football is back. So are the traditions, the tailgates, the great offers from DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yes.
Right now, new customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on any college football bet. Any bet, guys. You don't even have to get it right. You bet $5 on it, you're getting $200 in bonus bets. Kick off the season with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now. Use the code DNVR. New customers can score $200 in bonus bets instantly when they bet just $5 on any college football bet. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with that code DNVR. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8787-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net in partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. All games regulated by West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino Resort in Kansas, 21 and up in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbooks.draftkings.com/football terms. Whew, that was a mouthful.
That's how it's done right there. Leave our guy a thumbs up for that one. Well done. Well done, J. Mike.
Honestly, that was probably better than I did it at home. I think the pressure, that was a gamer moment. The lights were on. You got to nail it.
That's right. It's a gamer and can play with tempo. Jay would appreciate that.
I'm an air raid kind of guy.
That's right. Exactly.
Also want to give out some love to the homies at Pins and Aces, the official golf apparel partner of ALLCITY and DNVR. We love our Pins and Aces, get tons of compliments on and off the course. I'm a big golf aesthetic guy. I am terrible at golf in terms of actually playing the sport, but I'm a rock a golf fit because the clothes are great. They're stylish, but they're athletic. You've got some mobility. They're family-owned golf apparel business based right here in Colorado. They make amazing polos, hats, even our favorite beer sleeve. It's an innovative product that allows you to store 7 beers right in your golf bag. You can keep them cold the entire round. Check out pinsandaces.com. Use the code DNVR. Get 15% off your first order. Get free shipping. That is pinsandaces.com. All right, we're going to change directions here a little bit. Right now, we've been talking about this 2023 season. There's a lot on the line for this CSU squad. Moving forward, it's all uncertain right now given realignment. I'm curious. I want to pick your brain, though. As far as the Rams...
Stakes are massive.
What do you think would be best for this league? If Cal and Stanford go to the ACC, which it looks like there's a decent chance that happens, we'll see. If not, maybe they go back to the Big 12 and beg and take a reduced share since they're willing to go to the ACC reportedly for $8 to $10 million anyways, which makes no sense. You're going to triple your travel costs for Mountain West TV money.
I don't get that at all.
I don't get it at all, but it's...
I mean, it almost seems other sports motivated, which I think for Stanford and Cal probably matters more than just about every other institution in the country.
It's a good point. The Olympic sport element is much different for those schools.
Some great baseball programs, you know.
Who they want to be associated with institutionally is certainly a factor. But
no, it makes no sense financially.
No, it just makes so much sense. Of this
or regionally or travel cost wise, logistically, it makes no sense. I think that's the awkward fit. It made sense when Cal and Stanford were being recruited by the Big Ten because of a potential Notre Dame partnership.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's watching all this, and they've never loved their NBC contract more. Why would they ever move?
You control your own fate at this point. So long as NBC is willing to pay them, why would they cave?
Totally. And all in the while, they can also influence the ACC as a wink partner, so Notre Dame, best deal in the world.
Why don't you take Stanford and we'll consider maybe theoretically, possibly, potentially coming down the line. Probably not, but maybe.
Exactly. So that's the one I'm just going to take the two base schools out of this equation right now because none of that makes much sense to me right now. I do think bringing in for the Mountain West, Oregon State and Wazoo would be really nice.
They're great fits.
They're
attendance-wise, they average, especially Washington State, right about the same stadium size. I mean, I know Oregon State, it's a tough pill for them to swallow right now because they're a legitimate top 15 program at the moment. I mean, they could play for a Pac-12 title in their last year in the Pac-12, which honestly, I'm rooting for that. I hope Oregon State wins the Pac-12, and I hope that they come to the Mountain West and recognize that this could be a fun league. I'm a Mountain West guy. I know, I don't lie about that. Is it a perfect league? No. But it's a league that makes sense regionally. It's
lost a little momentum as well.
Oh, for sure.
What you've said about the Rams in some ways applies to the league as well. Like that
2014, that was the last New Year's Six appearance. Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl.
They were cooking with gas, know? They were cooking with gas. They've lost some momentum to the American and stuff. That's another one. I think that American partnership, and I don't know how many real legs there are. You should, kind of flesh that out for us all and give us more context. That, to me, is where there's some intrigue. Let's create maybe not the next Power Conference, but the next Power G5 Conference,
the best of the rest, essentially.
Yeah. Right, and then that auto bid is almost or that auto at large bid.
Yeah,
it's almost like an auto bid for the American Mountain West League.
That's a good point. Basically what Dre is talking about here is if Oregon State and Washington State were to determine we don't want to be in the Mountain West, we're going to go to the American. We like being associated with ESPN more than Fox. We think that there's more ability to renegotiate our TV deal down the line. We think the future is better. You'd be drastically increasing your travel, obviously, because all of a sudden, you're with FAU, FIU. And the American is much different. This is not the American that has been good these last couple of years. They no longer have Cincy, Central Florida.
They've been poached and lost some big dogs, yep.
And that's where I become a little bit skeptical of this. I see the appeal of schools like Memphis and Tulane and even UTSA, who's a really competitive program right now, well coached. Charlotte, even Navy, I don't know, UAB, those just don't really thrill me.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about it because if Oregon State and Washington State decide to go that route, now all of a sudden, if you're the Mountain West, you're worried that teams jump ship to that, especially if ESPN finances it all, and if you're a CSU, you basically have to go. And it would kill me because I don't think a school like Wyoming would factor into that conversation. And seeing that rivalry potentially die, I don't know. I hate that. But at the same time, if Fresno State, if San Diego State, if Boise State, if those schools, even UNLV, if they're poached by the American, the Mountain West is dead, and you can't stick around just because of Wyoming.
And there are a few schools in the conference currently, maybe not Wyoming, who feel like a bit of dead weight.
Oh, I mean, you could trim some fat. San Jose State, brings very little to the table. New Mexico, outside of basketball, they do. I mean, New Mexico has a great track program. Being fair to them, nobody cares, but They do.
Well, and the stories from the pit.
Well, and that's why it got interesting.
You know?
I would not want to cut New Mexico, for the record. I think Albuquerque's a great spot. Regionally, we've been together for 50 plus years, but
you also got to consider TV markets, as I always say. Like, to us college football nerds, it's all about, the history of the program, blah, blah, blah. TV money's ruling everything, and it's all about the TV market. And that's where, like, Tulane, which is in New Orleans, becomes intriguing. South Florida, is that Orlando? Is that by Miami?
I believe so.
No, UCF is
Central Florida
is Orlando. Yep.
Yeah.
SMU is Dallas. And obviously SMU's track record from the 80s is puts them in a different stratosphere. Memphis would be very intriguing for their track record, especially in basketball. Temple's in Philly, you know.
South Florida is basically Miami.
Yeah, and so I mean that'd be great to have a team in that kind of recruiting territory. And then Navy, I mean Navy's a national brand, and there would be some synergy with Air Force.
It'd be fun to have Navy and Air Force in the same league. I do think Air Force, if some Mountain West schools were going over to the AC, and CSU and Air Force explored it in the past. It's funny, they took a lot of heat, even from people like me who were like, that makes no sense at all. They were kind of ahead of the trend of what's happening now, where it's, kind of got to credit them for at least exploring the possibility.
And that's the thing, man. I think what this realignment's really taught us is you got to do you. You got to make your moves. You can't sit and wait because you don't want to be one of these schools like an Oregon State, like a Washington State that's left behind. And all of a sudden, it's the Fresh Prince meme of Will Smith looking around the empty room. You do not want to end up like that.
And again, as much as I love the border war, I think CSU Wyoming is not only the best college football rivalry in the conference, I think it's one of the best rivalries in the country. I think it's up there, with Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, CU. Like, I know it doesn't get the type of tension, but they've been playing since late 1800s. They haven't missed a game in 100 years. Like,
yeah,
it's amazing.
That matters, man.
But Oregon State and Washington State are perfect examples of why you can't sit around and just, trust that everything's going to be okay, because you have long-standing relationships with these other institutions. Because, Oregon State, Washington State, you're founding members.
I know.
And you get left behind.
I know. It's rough. I am coming around to, like, I don't think conference allegiance is really going to matter with these rivalries, all this. Like, these conferences are going to get so bloated that you're going to play less than half the teams in your conference schedule. You're still going to have non-conference, and you're still going to have South Carolina, Clemson, Colorado State, and I think there's going to be more and more room, Iowa State, to still have, even if it was an out-of-conference bout, still have Rams,
I hope so.
Wyoming.
I don't know, man. I look around and I see TCU is going to postpone their series with SMU. They've been playing for 100+ years. CU and CSU no longer play every year because CU wanted to pursue greener pastures, and then they scheduled a home-and-home with Air Force, which made absolutely no sense. I'm all for local games.
True,
I'm just saying, if you're going to play one, you should play CSU.
For sure. Hit the like, guys. Hit the like. It's been awesome seeing the chat pop in, seeing how many live viewers we've got. And, you guys have stuck with us throughout the show. Pump up those likes for us so more members of the Ramley can find this show and just make this more of a thing as we get into college football. J-Mike's about to win us a lot of money as we go full sicko mode on week 0. So get those likes up. Let's do this thing, man. Taylor says it perfectly. So, yeah, please, your support would mean everything. Please and thank you.
You know what I could use? I know it's a little early in the morning, but talking about this college football.
Oh, never early.
I could use an ice-cold Breckenridge Mountain Beach sour.
Let's go.
Because it is the perfect, and I mean perfect amount of sweetness, perfect amount of tartness. Some sours, they're overwhelming. You try one, and it's like, get the pucker face going. Some of them you try them, it's like, how much sugar did you put in this thing? Mountain Beach, perfection. Goes good by itself, goes good with food, pizza, burger. It's one of those perfect, it's a role player,
It's true, man.
it's going to do what it needs to do to get the job done.
That's true.
And that's what we love about Breck Brew. They've been doing it for 33 years. It all comes down to their love, their passion for making good beer. They've made with 100% renewable energy. Gotta love that. And you gotta love the endless variety that they offer, whether it's Mountain Beach, whether it's Avalanche Amber Ale, a staple. You can't go wrong. Check out the Breck Beer locator at breckbrew.com. Find a brew near you. And if you're out drinking beers, if you're in the sunshine, you're going to need some Shady Rays.
Oh, yeah.
You can keep that sun out of your eyes, keep the haters in the dark. Shady Rays, baby, they are the best. They are an independent company. They make sunglasses that are just as good as all the fancy brands that you've worn. These things are awesome. They're really great quality. I mean, I was wearing my Shady Rays while I was biking up in the mountains, fell off, hit a rock, not even a scratch on the lens. But the thing is, I could have ran them over, broken it in half, and not even cared because it's covered by lost and broken replacements. All I got to do, hit up Shady Rays.
You got it.
They
like
would have
that.
replaced my pair. No questions asked. You can shop the entire collection at the Park Meadows Mall, full-stop shop for all things Shady Rays. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange for a new pair or return them free within 30 days. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com. Use the code DNVR for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. All right. Week 0 is here.
Let's do it.
College football is here. We could talk realignment until we're blue in the face.
We could.
Going hypotheticals. What if this? What if that? But we have real games to dive into.
Yes.
And it's not a gorgeous slate of games. I'm not going to lie. But the best game of the weekend is a Mountain West game. San Diego State hosting Ohio. Ohio has not won the
It's
MAC.
a full G5 off.
It's a G5 off. This could be a bowl game.
Yeah, dude. MAC v. Mount West. This is a big one. Are you surprised? San Diego State just a 2.5 point favorite.
A little. Here's the thing about Ohio. Curtis Rourke is the best quarterback in the MAC. They've got all conference talent.
He's been around so long.
It's like
Justin.
year 6.
What the hell?
Yeah. They've also got an all conference running back, receiver, linebacker, corner, and defensive end. This is a team that is very heavily picked to win the MAC along with Toledo. So this is an experienced team. They've got a lot of returning starters.
At home, too.
I'm kind of fading San Diego State this year.
Let's do it.
I like Ohio in the upset, like straight up on the money line. You can get it. It's not great value, plus 115 last time I checked. But
SDSU has not been great the last several years, man.
They found their rhythm a little bit
tier
offensively. Last year, they fired, much like Boise State, switched quarterbacks, switched OCs right around the start of conference play. Maiden's okay. I mean, he takes a lot of risks with the football. He's very limited as a passer. I like Ohio in this one. There's something about San Diego State coming off of that national championship run. The Aztecs, I think they're feeling themselves just a little bit too much. I think this is an upset alert, despite the fact that, there's no better home field advantage than college football.
Let's do it. I'm riding with you on this one.
Rocking with Ohio. We're both going with the Bobcats. I like it. All right, Hawaii going to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt came in and kind of thumped Hawaii early last year.
On the island, though.
On the island. Hawaii, over the first 5 weeks of the season, arguably the worst team in the FBS a season ago. However, down the stretch, they were competitive. They did not win a lot of games, but most of their games were one score. They were one of the best teams in the country in terms of covering the spread. I like Hawaii's chances to potentially cover the 17.5 here. Tylen Hines, their running back, is a stud. I voted him second team all conference. They have quarterbacks back. Defensively, you're really worried about this Warriors team. They got a couple decent corners, but outside of that, I don't know. Vandy has failed to cover in 9 of their last 10 home openers.
I love this stat.
And their stadium is still under construction. So it's not going to be like a rockin' atmosphere. It could very easily be a situation where if Hawaii is in the game early, Vandy gets tight. I also could see very easily where Vandy gets that run game going. They're well coached under Clark Lee. This is not the same Vanderbilt of 5-10 years ago where they pull away early. But I'm rocking with Timmy Chang. I think he's the perfect guy for that program. I think the players have bought in, and I like this spot, 17.5.
I mean, It's hard for me. I love that stat on Vandy not covering. I think the safest route is Hawaii plus 9.5 first half.
I love that.
A little tightness early. I also love the stat you have in here of last 10 home openers for Vandy.
Gone over.
So what is that? 55.5 in this one. I like that as well. I hate this 17.5. If you're twisting my arm, I actually think I'm going Vandy on this one.
I like it. We don't want to have complete consensus here. I mean, all right, I'm rocking with Hawaii. Dre rocking with Vandy.
It's an uncomfortable 17.5, but
I do like the over, though. I like the over, and I really like the over in this next game, San Jose State, USC. Oof. This is the best quarterback matchup of the week. You've got Chevin Cordero at San Jose State, another 6-year college football player.
Love this.
He was the preseason offensive Mountain West Player of the Year. And obviously you have Caleb Williams, the reigning Heisman winner, right. The Heisman favorite.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. The over-under set at 66.5, which is a ton. But, I mean, I could very realistically see USC throw 50 on the board. And, like, so long as San Jose State is somewhat competent, I really like the over. And I don't hate San Jose State's chances of covering 30.5, given that it's week 0, given that you have a veteran quarterback. You've got great talent at receiver.
Yes. Those fans aren't going to be engaged at USC. It's at USC, right?
It's in the Coliseum. But yeah, this is not the game that the SC faithful are showing up for.
I just 30.5 is absurd.
It's too big
for how bad this Trojans defense been over the years. That's an absurd line.
Chevin Cordero is.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's absurd. Give me San Jose State 30.5 all day.
We're both rocking San Jose State.
I had to pick one Mount West team against the spread.
Yeah, we got to at least somewhat be on brand.
Yes.
We're going to get out of here, but just real quick, I'm going to ask your gut. Notre Dame, 20.5 point favorites, playing Navy in Ireland.
In Ireland? Come on.
Probably fun if you're there, but as a college football fan, I'm like, you're taking a game that was a 3-point game a year ago, and you're probably putting in a terrible setting. Forecast is calling for rain.
Dude.
The over has hit in this matchup 10 of the last 12 years. Notre Dame closed with 7 straight overs in 2022. They obviously bring in Sam Hartman, revitalize offense at quarterback.
Yeah, I'm a Hartman guy for sure.
Also, cut block rules impact Navy and Air Force this year, actually, basically eliminating the cut block. I'm hesitantly take Notre Dame, but the fact that it's in Ireland makes me hate it, and I could very well see this be like a 1-score game in pouring rain.
Slop fest, new offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
In Ireland, I'm sprinkling the Navy money line. It won't
plus
happen because Sam
right?
Hartman's good. Yeah, plus 675.
But it is realistic enough for that type of juice in week 0 where it's worth sprinkling.
Yes, absolutely. And you said the overs hit in a bunch of these. Give me the under.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, slop fest.
In Ireland.
Yep. It all lines
now I'm coming
up.
back to Navy 20.
It's a counterintuitive.
I like it.
Golden Domers v. Golden Domers.
Last games, I'm just going to throw them out there just so that the audience has them.
I don't have takes, but I'm taking notes of your takes on these.
UTEP, Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State making the jump to the FBS. They are 1-point underdogs at home in their first ever FBS game. UTEP's actually been a pretty decent program, but I kind of like Jacksonville State here. They're led by Rich Rod.
I'm about it. Rich Rod.
1-point dog. There's going to be a lot of juice. Everybody's excited going to the FBS, kind of like JMU a year ago. I'm betting on Jacksonville State coming out competitive. We'll see. UMass, 7.5-point dogs at New Mexico State. New Mexico State, well coached by Jerry Krill. A lot of sharp money has come in on UMass. It was a double-digit spread at one point, now down to about 7.5. I really would just avoid that game as a better, but I think it's one that I'll probably bet on in the second quarter. And finally, Louisiana Tech, 11-point favorites against Florida International. That's a conference matchup, week 0. Hank Bachmeier making his debut for Louisiana Tech. I hate 11's a lot to cover in a conference game in week 0. Give me FIU.
LA Tech's just getting The name recognition bump.
And it's a lot of unknowns with that squad. It's a completely new team, new quarterback.
I've heard of them because Napier coaches at Florida. Get out of there.
All right, you heard it. We're rolling with FIU. Thank you so much for tuning in to DNVR Rams Live. We will be back each and every week previewing CSU's opponent. Obviously, they don't have one this week. We'll talk about what's happening around the Mountain West, what's happening in college football, all that fun stuff. Please like, subscribe, share this with your friends, your family, your mother, your father, every Ram fan you know. Let's build this DNVR Rams community up. Much love, y'all. Go Rams.